Jon Bailey is a professional voice artist and the current narrator for Honest Trailers, and he's with us here today. How are you doing?
I'm kind of like how I'm just current narrator.
Yes.
He can be replaced at any time.
Yeah, you need an understudy or something. So what's it like to actually be a voice actor, first of all? Is it fun?
I think it's fun. I mean, if you love creating characters and you love just having fun and you're really good with your voice and it's just
Yeah.
something you really enjoy doing, yeah, it's absolutely fun. But
Yeah.
if you're in it for the money, you're probably going to be very disappointed because most of the time there's no money there.
Yeah.
There's an elite group of Illuminati voice actors that get most of the work, and the rest of us just kind of are the piranhas feasting off of the chicken carcass that gets thrown in the water during the Discovery Channel show.
Yeah. And how did you first start to get interested in voice acting originally?
I heard Optimus Prime's voice when I was a kid. It wasn't in Transformers, but it was the same guy. It was Voltron, and we were very new to having a television. We didn't get a TV in our house till I was close to 10 years old. It was just a poor family, you know.
Yeah.
Back then, TVs were not exactly expensive, and my parents were always like, "Whatever technology comes out, we'll wait till it makes it to a yard sale, and then we'll buy it." So we so a lot of garage sales. We got a lot of things that were like 10 years behind. Everybody else was on PlayStation 2 while I get my first Atari 2600. So I'm pretty used to that kind of thing. But I heard Voltron come on, and Peter Cullen, the voice of Optimus Prime, was doing the whole intro thing, and that blew my mind. I mean, it didn't hurt that it was Voltron, because Voltron also had that cool like Voltron Defenders on the universe, but that Voltron, that just epicness. I was like, I want to be whatever that is. Like one day that'd be so cool. And that was just kind of the seed where it got planted. And then when I heard him again in Transformers, I kind of got hooked on that show. I started imitating I'd imitated voices before, but it was only from Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, because we really only had one public access show with kids shows on it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot of children's programming back then. And that TV was only at grandmother's house, so I didn't get to watch it very often. But yeah, once Transformers got there, I started imitating those voices, and I would, had a Fisher Price tape recorder. I would record my own episodes that I would come up with, or I would use the coloring books, which had, brand new quote unquote stories and like record those. But it's the same thing as you have now, except that I didn't have a cell phone and rich parents. So, that kind of sparked the interest, which led to, getting inspired and looking into it further later on. Once the internet got developed by Al Gore, they started to compile information about the voice actors that were out there, and slowly people started learning who was behind the scenes, because in the 80s and 70s, they didn't put who did what voices. They just put the cast name in the credits, and you just had to guess who did what. I mean, I assumed that Frank was not a girl's voice, but you never know. And for a long time, we thought that an actor named Jack Angel was Optimus Prime, because we heard we saw his name in the credits of Dark Forces, the video game, one of the early LucasArts game. It was the Star Wars Doom style game. And one of the cutscenes had the main bad guy, the main Tarkin type character from the Empire. And it was Jack Angel's voice, but it sounded very Optimus Prime-y. And we was like, maybe that's the guy. And we checked the credits, like Jack Angel. And for a long time, we thought that was Optimus. But, thankfully, the internet eventually got things ironed out. And now there's tons of information. You can find out pretty much who anybody is at any time. But back then it was a lot harder. But, I found anything I could find on the internet that would be helpful, how to create characters, how to, just stuff with cool voices. I would listen and record it back. I had a little handheld recorder when I was in college. I did a lot of improvisational stuff. I was the sketch guy in college and school. Even from when I was like 4 years old and up. Like, I think I did my first thing in church. I was Bible boy or something for some promotional deal. And I came to knock off laziness's socks off or something like that. Cause I was like, oh, you're too lazy to go to church. I'll knock you black off. I was a little kid. And then, I kind of became the go-to guy for that kind of stuff. I worked in the puppet ministry, which gave me a chance they had for a church that wasn't that big with not a lot of money. I don't know where they got all these puppets, or people made them or donated them. They had a decent selection. So I kind of had a good time just kind of coming up with characters. In fact, I probably would have loved to go into, working with Jim Henson's company, because I've seen the behind the scenes stuff. My friend Paul Rugg, he's the Earth to Ned actor from the new Disney Plus series. He's been doing stuff with them since Puppet Up, which was an improv Muppets thing back when Muppets wasn't quite as big as it was. It's probably been 10, 15 years ago now. But
Yeah.
I was just like, man, that would be so much fun because I was really good at it. Not everybody can move the hands to the mouth movements and, talk and speak at the same time and also operate a hand,
Mm.
but yeah, it was a pretty awesome experience. And all this stuff was kind of training for what I would end up doing, which is what I do now.
Yeah.
And also music theory and singing, and a lot of that in school and church, even with school competitions. I got first place. And I think as far as it went was statewide, which is still, a few million people. I got first place in, solo in my category.
Yeah.
And also later on in acting, I would do creative, I forget what they called it, but anyways, you basically just memorize a copy, and they had different categories. You could either do drama or you could do comedy. I would always choose comedy because it's just easier to make people laugh than it is to try to make people cry. Because like you're talking about a Christian school, people aren't really looking to be like, oh, the drama with this world's smallest violin playing and Mr. Krabs in the background. But it really is the world's smallest violin, And then at that point, it was just something I did as a party trick to kind of, warm people up to me. And, I was like, oh, yeah. In my family, my wife's family, back when we were just dating, I knew that they were super into politics. So I would do Clinton or George Bush, HW or W, or just whoever they were currently talking about. And I'd do some voices, and it was just kind of an icebreaker kind of thing. And then after we got married, my wife was at home while I was at work, and she made MySpace, which was a brand new thing at the time. And she figured out how to design a page for me, and she was so excited. And a pop-up ad came up through it because of the way that the site was designed. Your interests are actually keywords for their search engine. But because she knew enough about that, I knew that I liked cartoons and voice acting and stuff. So she put a lot of that in there. And a pop-up ad for a national chain of studios popped up that happened to have one location within 15 minutes driving distance from us, right there in Memphis, which Memphis, Tennessee is not known for anything other than blues and barbecue and, crime. So I didn't really know there was any voice actor related stuff there. So I went down there and did my thing. They were really impressed with me. My wife gave me the greatest piece of information because I never thought of it as a career before.
Yeah.
She's like, well, the worst they can do is say no. What do you got to lose?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's actually kind of true. So yeah, what do I have to lose? So, I mean, I can always say that I tried it if it didn't work out. But that led to me doing a little bit part-time. I still had a full-time job at the time. I did a lot of heavy machine operation equipment stuff. And then the economy collapsed, and my job was one of the jobs that got affected. So we were basically jobless with just some 401k money that I'd cashed out, a small severance package that lasted us a month. That was it, 1 month, in the middle of a job market where my particular jobs that I was good at and certified for were just no longer existent. All the jobs had been taken because everybody that had seniority was like, I ain't going nowhere. And all the bottom half got dropped, and we had nowhere to go. So my wife goes, why don't you just try doing the audition thing full time? So I did. I just audition, fixed computers, got borrowed, begged, and stole, just whatever I could to survive for that first year. Was really, really rough. And then my first manager found me online. I started a YouTube channel in 2007, and I just put up voice stuff. Mainly it was Optimus Prime, Transformers, G.I. Joe, kind of cartoon dubbing stuff at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that kind of led to me being like the internet Optimus Prime for a little while. And then, but that boosted up my numbers enough. So when I did some movie trailer parody stuff, whatever, it got some decent views. And then the legendary Don LaFontaine, who kind of came up with those phrases, in a world, one man, he passed away at a very young age. I think he was 53 or 56. He had a odd heart problem. And my first manager just was looking around to see who else might be out there. And YouTube happens to be the second largest search engine on the internet next to Google. Yeah. And he pulled me up within a few pages, and he was like, wow, this guy's, his term was raw. Like I hadn't had a lot of experience, which it was true. I'd only had like a year of professional experience and very little and no training. So most of it I was just learning. I was all on the job training from that point on. And he's like, I think you got a lot of talent, a lot of raw talent, and I think we could work with you. He sent me out some stuff to try, and I'd booked 3 out of 4 of them. And from that point on, I really just mainly booked movie trailers, but I still did the audition thing with the other company until that company went out of business. And they locked up that location and got rid of it. At that point, I'd been a couple of years, or about a year or so, and that's when Honest Trailers had found me oddly enough, through the same YouTube video that my manager had found. And then by that time, though, I had added all these trailers that I had booked. So my website looked kind of like an early Netflix. So all these thumbnails of all these movies that I had found images of, and you could click on some of them and go to the YouTube trailers. I'm like, oh, wow, you do this for a living. So that led to the Honest Trailers gig, because they thought it'd be cool to have a real movie trailer guy do their fake movie trailer thing. And the clout and popularity of that series has obviously helped me book other things that I would not. It gave me opportunities I would not have otherwise gotten, or it would have taken me much longer to get those opportunities. But thankfully, because it's like, oh, you work on that thing. As soon as people find out other things that I do, all of a sudden their eyeballs pop out of their head. They're like, holy crap! I had to thought they all think you're a one-trick pony because of the one thing that you're popular for. I'm sure they all thought that Luke Skywalker or that Mark Hamill for a long time was only good to be a whiny space kid until they realized that he's an amazing voice actor and actor, period. So, they just don't give us a chance. And then sometimes I'll run across a director, like Adam Goldberg, the guy who created the Goldberg series on ABC. But he also helped make Fanboys and a bunch of other really great stuff. Like he started like, hey, I got an idea. And we had been introduced through Transformers toys of all things, because he's a big nerd like I am. And he was like, oh, wow, I had no idea you could do all this stuff. And I was like, see, that's what I'm missing. I'm missing that chance to get in front of the right people and show them what I'm able to do, because they all know me for that one thing. So TikTok has kind of just opened up the eyes of everybody to realize, because a lot of people have already been fans and don't even realize they were already fans, but they didn't put the two and two together to realize I was the same guy. Yeah. So I'm like, wait a minute, are you the guy that does that? Yes, I am. Just because that's one thing I do doesn't mean that's the only thing I do. And it doesn't mean that I talk like this all the time and that's my voice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I did see a YouTube video you did where you were doing Epic Voice Guy as a character and still talking in that voice.
That's kind of the whole shtick now. It's pretty much he's his own character, because specifically with Honest Trailers, they have me kind of break the fourth wall a lot and go like, wait, what? This is so it's not just a standard trailer voice anymore. He's kind of apparently he's got kids, apparently he's been divorced, and they keep changing up his family stuff. And I'm like, you guys aren't really being very consistent with the guy's life here. But yeah, it really is just a character. And I think it's so funny because nobody goes up to, well, I'm sure there's a few people, but most people don't go up to Mark Hamill and be like, hey, when you make can you make another Star Wars? Like, you don't go up to Kevin Conroy and talk about what Batman he's going to make. Why would you go to the guy who voices this series and ask him to make this version of this thing? Or, hey, make the Honest trailer for this thing. I don't have anything to do with that. I'm a voice actor. I'm not the producer, the publisher, the writer. Take 2 seconds to look at those characters, those symbols, the symbols underneath the caption. They're words that mean there's more than one person working on this video.
Yeah, I guess it's just this kind of assumption that most people on YouTube do it themselves.
It's an absolute assumption. It's because people are so fast paced. Somebody probably sent them a link to a thing, and all they did was watch the video. They completely skipped over looking at the text. So they just assume voice, video, +1 + 1 = 2. It's all one guy doing everything. If that was true, I wouldn't have to kill myself working so much, because I could be making all that internet money. Because those things get crazy views. I'd be making a ton. They have brand paid sponsorship stuffs and everything.
Oh yeah.
I make enough to survive and not fall into terrible debt, and that's all I get.
Are there any Honest trailers that have been your favorites to work on?
Yeah, there's been 2 that were my favorites. Pacific Rim, only because that was such a crazy fun movie. And while they were writing it, they're like, I feel like we're forgetting something. It's like, you guys completely skipped how ridiculous it is. Because one of the things you do in Honest Trailers is you look for the same thing to happen more than once in the film. And if they do it over and over and over again, that's what you point out, because people tend to be creatures of habit. And not once, not twice, but 3 different times out of the movie being over your head that there has to be 2 people that are totally in sync in order to operate one of these giant robots. 3 different times, it's one person by himself. And then they first of all, they have to be related, and then it's just 2 total strangers, and they're like, oh man, how did we not notice that? It is so stupid that they make it's a huge part of the movie was all talking about how the things worked and how it had to be 2 compatible people, and they just completely forgot how much time they wasted talking about it, and they didn't even stick to it themselves. And so, the fact that I don't normally write them, and I got a writer's credit for that one, and the fact that was, my idea to bring that up, that kind of just made it, and it's just funny too. There's like, brass knuckles, a doggy. And then the Deadpool one, because that was my first chance to work with the actual Ryan Reynolds, which to this day, people still, so was that really Ryan Reynolds or was that you? I was like, of course it wasn't. Or was it? No, it really was. It was Ryan Reynolds, but unfortunately he was in Europe at the time, so I did not get to meet him. But the fact that we got to work on something and he kind of legitimized our internet thing and made it more mainstream and more popular because they basically adapted it for the first film. That was kind of that and Frozen were kind of the turning point, because I had been telling them all along when I first got on there. I was like, why aren't you guys doing games? But many of them are very cinematic. You could easily point out, no, we don't really have the audience for that. And then all of a sudden they found one. It's like, hey, guess what we're doing? We're doing games. I'm like, oh, it's like somebody told you that idea several months ago. And then I was like, you guys know I do more than one genre of movie. And after a while, I think they just didn't realize, maybe it just took them a while to get used to me, or just to kind of treat me as more than just a voice actor and actually listen to my brain. And finally one day I was like, listen, check this out. Horror, action, family, drama. And they're like, holy crap, we can do, I was like, thank you. Yes, you can do any movie, not just the action movies. Because all they were doing were action films. Every action movie, action, well, fantasy, but all of them were that kind of, coming this summer type voice. And I was like, I know the internet loves that consistency of keeping the voice the same, but I feel like you have so much. When we did Frozen 1, and I did the family voice, and it freaking huge. It blew up so fast, millions of views overnight. And I think it had 6 million or 10 million in a night. And that was like our first mainstream huge viral hit that made it to the news. And everybody was like, Frozen, Screen Junkies points out all the problems with Frozen, blah, blah, blah. I would go to Comic-Con and little kids would be like, you're the voice of Honest Trailers. I love the Frozen one, Like, we didn't even, and little kids are the guys were forgetting that little kids were the main audience that they're trying to reach here, because they're the ones that use the YouTubes and the TikToks. So like, once we did that, we started doing a lot more animated stuff, and so it really did open the door, and Disney stuff really in general. So yeah, I think it's just, it's a combination of their great writing, me doing improvised skills, the editors doing an amazing job editing everything together. So it really is a team effort that just kind of culminates into something pretty awesome. But yeah, I mean, we're doing it a really long time. So, but it took a little bit for that first probably few months, because we only did about one a month, I think, at first. It might have not even been that many. But yeah, it was, I think it was just one. So I did one, and I did Inception in November, I think it was, or December. And then it was Lord of the Rings was the very next, or Harry Potter was the very next one. No. We did Lord of the Rings. Hang on. Lord of the Rings, then Harry Potter, and then Inception. I got it. And the reason why it was kind of rocky at first, because I thought they were trying to sort of rug pull people, like trick them into thinking this was a real trailer, only to find out that it's a fake trailer. So I was just trying to match whatever the real trailers were sounding like. So with Harry Potter, I went with the standard Harry Potter voice, coming from Harry Potter. Then that was the voice that they had on all the Harry Potter trailers. A lot of fans were like really mad, because like, this voice isn't the same. And they had to actually put a little extra thing on. It was like, if you think this voice is weird, check out the original Harry Potter trailer if you forgot. And they decided not, and I think that was probably why they were too scared to change the voice too much after that first time, because it happened very early on. But by the time we did Inception, the third one that we done, it finally clicked for me. I was like, oh, I get it. I'm making fun of myself. I'm not trying to trick people into thinking this is a real trailer. I need to make this sound like a fake trailer. So I basically started doing a parody of my own trailer voice. So, and there's very subtle differences. I mean, it's the difference between in a world and in a world, because one of them sounds a little less like a professional read, and one of them sounds more professional. So we try to, that was our biggest complaint on the very first one I did. It sounds too much like a real trailer. I'm like, I thought that was the point.
And how long does it take to actually record the scripts for each one?
When we first started, there was a lot of excessive direction. So it was, but I was still pretty new at it too. So it took about an hour to do one. But so between the Honest Game trailers and the Honest trailers, it would took about 2 hours a day.
Wow.
Now I just kind of got it down to like a science, and we can knock out we can knock out both of them within 15 minutes to 30 minutes. It just really depends on how long it is and how much, but there's also pickups, and there's also revisions, and there's a lot of extra stuff. So I mean, total from beginning to end, it probably takes up at least an hour,
And do you get to do this at home, or are you going somewhere?
Oh yeah, I've got a full home studio. I hardly ever work outside the studio. I've been telling them since I started this business that you shouldn't have to live in LA if you have good internet and you have a really nice professional box to record in. But it took a pandemic for them to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of other projects, what's the strangest thing that you've been asked to work on?
Well, this is a very, how family friendly is your show? I'll try to keep it PG. So I was working on this. This is not for kids now. This is a show on Netflix called Sabura, and it's basically Sopranos, but in Italy. And there was somebody in there from Moana. There was one of the main characters from Voltron. It was a pretty decent cast we had there. And I normally don't get to record in person either. And the director is also a famous voice actor. And he comes in the room and he's making all his jokes. And he's like, hey guys, you ready for the big ORGY tonight? And we're all like, funny. We thought he was just doing those little icebreaker, dark humor joke kind of things. And sure enough, the very first scene, and you have to understand when you're dubbing for something, they put it on a big giant screen for you to watch. Yeah. So you know what it sounds like. And there's full, completely uncensored, like 30 people going to town. And he's like, you guys thought I was joking, didn't you? And we're all like, yeah. He's like, I figured this was the most awkward thing, so we just get this out of the way first. And then we listen. He's like, let's give it a listen through. And I didn't hear a lick of English or a lick of any other language in that whole stuff. Like, why do we need to redub this? They're just making noises. You don't need to re-record this. And then after we recorded it through, he's like, John, why don't you take this rather rigorous fellow over here in the corner? And I was like, I can't wait for that credit on my IMDb so I can show my mommy.
Yeah.
That was the most weird thing I've ever had to do.
Yeah. And you have done some voices for toys as well, right?
Yeah, that was one of my first early gigs, was getting to do some voices for some not just any toys either, but Star Wars toys, man. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's great. And what's it like to do toy voices?
What's it like to play with myself? No, I don't play with them. I have them up and displayed. I made the mistake of giving the Republic Attack Shuttle to my boys, who I thought were responsible enough. There's nothing left, man. It has severe battle damage.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if we're interested in keeping up with you and all your voice work, where are we able to do that?
I'm pretty easy to find. Just add Epic Voice Guy on pretty much everything except for Facebook.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.